Hello and welcome back to Logan Sounds Off. Today I'm going to be talking to two very interesting musicians who play in an incredible Irish band who have been critically acclaimed and have gotten a lot of attention for their latest live album, Live in Dublin, and their latest studio album as well, False Lankum. Daragh and Radie of Lankum have joined me on my podcast. Thank you so much, guys, to chat to me about this and so much more. Hey guys, how are you?
Oh, good.
Hello, happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
Having a fun.
Anyone watching in the future, it's my birthday today. So there you go. I'm turning 13 today. So it was a great birthday present. I got this actually as a birthday present live in Dublin today. And I've listened to it and I heard it on streaming services, so it was great to have it on vinyl. And it was a great birthday present to chat to you guys. Thank you so much for agreeing to join me on my podcast. I really do appreciate it. I'm a massive fan of your music, and I just anything you do to me is excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if we deserve all that praise, but we'll take it.
You definitely do, and I think there'll be tons of people who will agree. But for those who don't know you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Uh, we aren't great at describing our own music, but we play music in a band with Dara's brother Ian and Cormac. And we have a long-time producer and friend, John Spud Murphy, who now plays with us on stage. We make sort of folk adjacent music, I think. It's like folk, it's like doom folky type music. I'm very bad at it. We
It's
spoke
kind of like
earlier
if
about
you
I'm bad at this. I'm really bad at this.
maybe if you mixed Pink Floyd with Planksty or something like that, what made it a bit scarier.
But a bit scarier and a bit more
Maybe if
sludgy.
maybe if
I
maybe if
think
you
it's a
mash
bit
together
sludgy, to be
maybe if
honest.
you mash together Black Sabbath, Planksty, and Pink Floyd
You get
with
kind
some
of that,
electronics, with some extra electronics.
yeah, a bit drone kind of trad.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is weird, but it's cool. Like that, it's really cool music.
thank
But it
you.
is very hard to describe. Um, And even listening to Lankum, there are some influences that we hear of you guys listening to currently. I know John Spud Murphy, you just spoke about there, would be listening to Sun. And if anybody
Yeah,
doesn't know
Ian
Sun,
loves.
Sun are kind of drone metal, which you can, which is a weird thing to say, but I can kind of hear it in Lankum, which is kind of strange. And as well, the alternative rock band Swans. So I can hear that in the current Lankum. But going back to before the band was called Lynched, going back to way before you guys met up, before Lynched was even a thing, what were your influences growing up?
Oh, well, a massive influence for me, obviously, is I grew up playing traditional Irish music, like tunes, like reels and jigs. So that was like since I was 5. So I have heard a huge amount of traditional Irish music. And then started listening to kind of Shannon songs and traditional songs then when I was a teenager. But although I played trad and my siblings all played, my parents and stuff, and it's what I kind of do. I basically, once I was like kind of 10 or 11, started listening to, as I was saying, like Nina Simone, Radiohead, got really into Fats Domino, Fats Waller, just like different, very different types of music. I was into Nirvana, as everyone was at the time. Just kind of anything else that wasn't trad. I think for a while, I think what had happened to me was I was too immersed in traditional music and I didn't want to listen to it. You know what I mean? So I actually only really liked Planksty and stuff when I was older. When I was probably about 17 or 18, I started to listen to Planksty. I was more into like The Cure and stuff when I was younger. But yeah, like I don't know, like it would be hard, honest to God, like I don't know how to give a list of all the things that I've listened to and loved and kind of ingested musically in my life. But I think that like there's so many people at play in Lankum as well, where it's like it's kind of all of our influences all in this big kind of churning pot. And you never really know what's going to come out. And sometimes you don't even really understand what you've put into the pot. You know what I mean? And then sometimes it's somebody else hears it and they're like, oh, I can hear this. And you're like, oh, yeah, I actually am really into that. So yeah, maybe that was because it's kind of it's your subconscious. It's like someone asking you like about your dreams, and they're like, well, why did you dream about a, you know, giant pink elephant or whatever? And you're like, I don't know.
But, what about you, Dara? Because I know you and your brother were into punk music a bit as well. Like people like Patrick Fitzgerald and
Oh
people like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean all the punk stuff would have come slightly later when I was in my early teens. I really got into like I suppose the Beatles were one of the first big ones, and then like people like Beck, Pink Floyd, Sid Barrett, Rory Gallagher. Guns N' Roses were massive when I was like 9 or 10. I was like obsessed with Guns N' Roses. And then I suppose in my later teens, yeah, got into the likes of Subhumans, punk band, Rudimentary Peni, Patrick Fitzgerald was a massive one for me. And I think possibly led to myself and Ian starting to write those songs on the acoustic guitar. And then
It's very hard to remember your whole life musically, isn't it?
I'm just trying to think all the people I was into kind of before getting into playing tunes and meeting the lads, like so much stuff. Beck was a big one when I was younger. Um, and yeah, Nirvana, of course. Kind of, I think it was big getting into Nirvana that got me into playing the guitar actually. Because before that, I
Yeah.
started going to piano lessons when I was like 10, and but then I got a guitar for Christmas because I got really into Nirvana and started to teach myself like all the Nirvana riffs.
Yeah, it's definitely both the Beatles and Nirvana have influenced so many people in
Oh yeah,
cool ways. But even Patrick Fitzgerald, I found that so interesting hearing about you guys being into Patrick Fitzgerald, because I know one song by him, and it's his remake of Punch, one of his songs from years ago, but he did it on the alternative Tentacles record label, and it was just a
oh just
little seven
recently.
inch. Sorry?
He did that recently.
Yeah, he did that recently
Yeah,
with Jello Biafra and Motorcycle.
yeah.
Have you heard the song?
No, not yet.
Oh, it's actually really, really good. I bought the 7 inch in actually Roller Coaster Records. And I just
Class.
thought it was really cool. So that was honestly, I don't know anything else by Patrick Fitzgerald. It's somebody who's always been someone
You
on
should
my
check him out. He's
radar.
amazing. He's
I
so
know,
good.
and I heard I think just a snippet of a song even by him, and I thought it was really cool. So I'm gonna have a listen to him more. Um, but Dar, your journey actually started as a musician, really, with Lynched and your
Yeah,
debut album, which was called "Where Did It All Go Wrong?" And this was before you met Cormac and Radie. So,
yeah. It was a
uh,
good while before we met them. Probably like 6 or 7 years before we met them.
And the music is very different, as you can
it,
hear.
it is very different, and I didn't know what I was going to hear listening to Lynch, but it was very different, and it was just cool to hear. But I thought about what kind of connections to Lankum would there be, and I couldn't really find many to my ears. I could be
Weirdly, there's one thing that Lankum did that I always thought sounded quite like the early Lynch stuff, which is the tin whistles making this kind of like ethereal wind noise at the start of
Yeah,
the Pride of Petrivore.
that
That's
sounds
a
like Bonnie
very
Ryan.
that's a
oh
very very Lynch kind of early Lynch kind of
Even I didn't notice that.
yeah.
well, that's really interesting. And I should have probably noticed that myself because I love that song, The Pride of Petrivore. It's one of my favorites. So that's a pretty cool connection. So I better listen back to Lynched and just try and hear that connection. Pretty cool. But you met I'm not really familiar with the story of how you guys met Cormac, Radie and Daragh and Ian, how you guys all met. So could you tell us how did that come about?
So me and Cormac knew each other from when we were actually your age. So me and Cormac met when I was 12 and he was 14. We were in the same school. And it was this Closh Down and Closh East Gun in Dublin. So it's like a lot of trad musicians. It's very kind of trad centric school. So we met playing music at that age. And then he met the Lynch brothers then in his early 20s because he had a session. So Daragh and Ian had kind of just taken up playing traditional music. Ian on the pipes and Daragh backing tunes on the guitar. And they were looking for sessions to play at. So I think they met Cormac in Devitz, somewhere in like city centre Dublin anyway, and they were playing with him.
Yeah.
And I, in the meantime, I was living in Italy and I moved home basically, and I wanted to go back to playing sessions because I hadn't played in a session in like a year or something. So I went to the local session around the corner, which was Cormac's one, because I knew Cormac. And that's where I met the Lynch brothers. And we basically just played on the same sessions for a couple of months and started kind of singing songs. And then we all knew each other's songs. So we kind of sing along with the songs together. And basically just started hanging out and realizing that we had very similar, like aligned tastes. And that it worked kind of quite well together. And so then Ian and Daragh had already collected songs that they wanted to record, or most of them, for the album Cold Old Fire. And they asked me and Cormac would we play on a few tracks. And it's a bit of a blur to us. None of us can really remember exactly what happened. But basically, I think we did about 2 rehearsals and got extremely excited. And then we're just like, this is a band now. Because it just was very easy to make the sound we wanted and be like, wow, yeah, this, but this as well. And we realized we had a lot in common and that we had a big plan.
Really enjoyed, I think we all really enjoyed making vocal harmonies. Sometimes even at sessions, just as a joke, we'd kind of harmonize and try to make weird harmonies on purpose, just kind of for the laugh.
Yeah, kind of like harmonies. Yeah, so we'd been doing that for months before we kind of sat down to do it seriously. And then, yeah, it came together really, really fast, the material for that album, Cold Old Fire. And yeah, we released it in 2014. We toured in the States for like 6 weeks or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just kind of went from there. But the moment of us becoming a band is a bit hazy. We just all got very excited. And yeah.
That music fandom brought you together. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, we were giddy. We were so giddy about
it. but it's really interesting for me going like as a fan, watching you guys going from doing like joke vocal harmonies and really realizing this is something we could do to your cover of Rocky Road to Dublin now, which has some incredible vocal harmonies in it as well. It's just really cool. But your second album then after that, after Lynched, the Lynched album, you then had Cold Old Fire, as you were speaking about, and that was still under the name Lynched at the time. I believe it was changed to Lankum in 2017, wasn't it? In and around, yeah.
It was the end of 2016, start of 2017.
Yeah, and it was around then where you changed the name. But what after Cold Old Fire was released, not only were you guys giddy about the music, everybody started to really understand how powerful this music was, and it got a great reaction. And people started seeing you everywhere, and they saw you actually as a performance on Jules Holland as well, which is a pretty big deal. Playing, I believe, it was Father Had a Knife. Was that one of the tracks you played on that?
Salonica.
Yeah, they picked the upbeat songs for us to play. Because the thing is that even on that first album on Cold Old Fire, there is upbeat songs or whatever, but there are songs I think that like they're kind of an example of where something starts and ends up. So like let's say the Tricolored House or What Put the Blood, for example, you can hear in them what was going to happen later, I think, to the music, like that kind of like the heavy drone, the kind of weird long droney sections, the kind of sometimes kind of almost discordant vocal harmony kind of stuff. So that stuff was in there, but it's like it was loads of different seeds, and then that's the seed that grew. Probably the biggest was the kind of drone heavy element, you know.
That's really, really cool. And I just noticed where you mentioned all like the drones and the vocal harmonies. One of my favorite tracks from your studio albums, Go Dig My Grave, contains all of them. That you had all these different albums and they led up to False Lankum, and there's tons more that's being led up to, which is cool as well. But that's really interesting to see where it began with even songs like Father Had a Knife, that is quite upbeat, to go into songs like that that aren't that are just cool and doomy, but not in a dark, well, they are in a dark way, but just a really interesting style of music. So to see from that transition is quite interesting. And I'd like
yeah,
to.
And I think that was us maybe.
Oh, so no, so sorry.
I was just going to say that I think I think that was us gaining confidence in what we were into as well. Because I think not that we weren't into the upbeat songs, we enjoyed them too, but we were aware that those kind of slower drony ones were quite like they're kind of a bit of a tangent, or like a kind of, we didn't know if people would be willing to come with us down that road. Do you know what I mean? Even though we were really into it. So that was an interesting experience to actually realize that people are into that, and they do want to listen to that. And like for us, like the fact that False Lankum has been as successful as it is, when it's definitely the most uncompromising, like extreme album we've made, is very interesting, you know, because this idea that you have to please people or cater to what, you know, what you think people might like, it's just proven itself to be very untrue, you know, that you can actually just do what you're into, and sometimes people are into it too.
Yeah,
And I think
totally.
a
Yeah,
lot
because
of
like
people were into it.
We're very surprised by that, to be honest. We're still surprised. Even back in 2014 when we released the album, and then people liked it and we were on Jules Holland, then we had to make a second album. We're like, oh God, people are definitely going to listen to this now. Because the first one, we could have gotten away with nobody listening to it. We were just making it for ourselves, you know. And then suddenly we were like, oh, people are listening. We'll have to make it good. And yeah, I'm still totally shocked that people have come on this bizarre musical journey with us and enjoyed it.
it is kind of mad because
We've really enjoyed it. So.
yeah, totally. It's like the common wisdom is people won't pay attention for more than 2 or 3 minutes, and you need, you know, something snappy to happen and things to change for people to stay interested. And then we put out like a, how long is it called Take My Grave?
It's like
It's like 9 minutes.
Yeah.
And the whole second half of the song is just the same thing over and over and over again. And people loved it. So it's kind of like it's really reassuring to realize that, you know, people do actually like weird stuff, and you don't have to follow the prescribed path of what you should do.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And I mean, especially for me, when I first heard the album, I was like, I love it. I don't know why though. So it took me a couple of like turns of listening and just spinning it on my turn on sorry, listening to it on my CD player to go kind of finding out what my opinion was of the album. But what I found super interesting was when I transitioned to vinyl, the thing was the last track, the turn actually at the end of the side, it kind of I'm not sure, was it deliberate, or you guys can tell me, or was it
Yeah.
just happening that it goes back, that it keeps going for a long time, the end of it. And I thought that was so
Yeah,
cool. But I was spending 20 minutes there going, this feels longer, that it went it went for a very long time for me, that it kept going. But I thought that was really cool. I honestly thought that was super cool.
That was
And
John Spud Murphy wanted to do that. It's called a closed loop.
yeah. A closed
And
groove.
closed groove, sorry. And I think they used to do it in the 70s, but a lot of people were very confused by it. And my partner
I
stayed
was.
up to listen to the album, and I wasn't there, and I hadn't told him about this, and he didn't realize. And he was listening to that closed bit for like 40 minutes, and he was like, what is going on? And he said to me, he was like, what's going on with the album? And I was like, yeah, it's deliberate. You're meant to turn it off when you want to stop.
We actually got a few emails from people saying that their records were broken.
Oh my God.
It confused people writing us emails.
That's
But
so
and then
funny.
we also did there's a slight nod to that on the Live in Dublin album.
And that happened for me as well. And because I was like on the false Lankum, I was like, wow, that's kind of strange. And then I listened to the like Live in Dublin, and I went, oh yeah, very funny. Like the way it kept on
Yeah.
going, it was quite cool though. But my sister was lying up on the bed listening to it with me, and I was on my laptop, and I turned to her going, that is that the same thing playing over and over again? And I put my ear next to the speaker, and I heard this like I think it was like a little beep or something in the crowd or something, and I kept hearing it over and over again. Now at least I think that's repeated. They would be cheering for an awful long time. And I looked at the stylus and it was going over. It was so funny. But that's really, really cool. And I'd love to speak to the previous to you guys about the previous album to False Lankum, The Livelong Day, which is a fantastic LP. which has one of my favorite songs by you guys, The Wild Rover on it. It's an incredible
Yeah,
track.
really
But
good.
the thing about the Live Long Day is Cold Old Fire and your first couple of albums and Lynch really brought you guys onto the music scene, but people really loved the Live Long Day, including myself. When I listened to it after False Lankum, it was really, really cool. And it also received it was funny. You guys, I believe, were in a van just heading up to the NPR Tiny Desk concert, and you had a
Yeah,
wild story going up to that. But you guys received the RT Choice Music Prize for the Live Long Day. What was your reaction
yeah,
like trying to get to a concert at NPR and then being told you won the Choice Music Prize?
Yeah, well, we were in our friend Liam. We have a friend in New York called Liam, and we always stay in his apartment. And we were actually in his sitting room when we found out. But we were late for going to Washington, D.C. then, I think.
yeah,
But what was also happening was that was the start of the pandemic. So
Oh
we
wow.
won it and we were delighted. But about 2 days later, we realized that there was a global pandemic happening and we were stuck in America because our flights home got cancelled and
yeah,
we were
Bit
a
of a
bit
downer.
bit of a downer and we genuinely didn't know how to get home. So it was a crazy time, but actually the music of that album suits that.
yeah,
Like if I think that sounds like a very post-apocalyptic album, and it felt very apocalyptic to be in America. Like we were driving around New York and like the streets were totally empty.
yeah. It was insane.
Some of it was kind of, we did a few jokes where we put on the Terminator soundtrack and just like looked out the window. And you
That's
know,
if there ever is, God forbid, something ever happens like that again, there's a great soundtrack by a guy called Francis Monkman, and I haven't watched the film because it's definitely not for my age group, but I have listened to the soundtrack. It's called The Long Good Friday, and
Okay.
it's the soundtrack for The Long Good Friday, and that's car chase music. That's what that is. It's really, really cool. But that, like the Terminator soundtrack and that kind of stuff as well, The Long Good Friday, I just thought that was really funny. But no, the Live Long Day, and I remember reading I think it was somebody was saying about the album saying, yeah, it felt like it felt like they knew COVID was gonna happen. And I kind of looked up from my screen and went, I'm gonna have to listen to that album again, like in a whole new
yeah,
light. But
You've
it
said that before.
that's how I feel about it. When COVID actually happened, I felt like that music was too on. So basically, what happened to me was I was like, because so part of what was on the Live Long Day, there's one track, Katie Crew, that was actually meant for a post-apocalyptic uh, film set in Ireland, that never got made. So that was meant to be a soundtrack to this post-apocalyptic film set in Ireland. And then I think the rest of the album kind of suits that as well. And like kind of the landscape on the cover, like I remember doing the interview before COVID about it and talking about how like, picturing kind of post-apocalyptic kind of barren landscapes and this kind of thing. Right. And then COVID happened and I was like, oh gosh, that's a bit too on the nose. And I actually rewatched all the Terminator films at the start of COVID because I kind of went through a bit of a post-apocalyptic phase, and then actually COVID went on for too long then. So then I wanted the complete opposite. So then I started listening to like loads of Enya and like
oh,
real
wow.
escapism stuff and like watching Enya's brilliant, by the way. Enya
Oh,
is
yeah. I
amazing.
have one of her
You haven't
records,
delved
but I've
into
never got
Enya.
to it yet. So I'll definitely have
Enya
a
is
listen.
brilliant. But that was real kind of pure escapism music. So I think what happened with False Lankum is that we kind of although the heavy and like kind of more kind of somber parts of it are still very kind of somber and heavy and like kind of full of turmoil. There's these really light parts in it as well, deliberately, and that was because like we kind of felt the need for like this kind of lightness or kind of escapism there as well. So there's kind of sweeter stuff in there, so it's meant to be kind of like in both directions have gone kind of more extreme.
Yeah, and that's why
Uh,
I kind of was kind of sitting on my bed before school in an emotional roller coaster after listening to Go Dig My Grave and then Clear Away in the morning. And I was kind of in the middle of
yeah.
few going. bit of a strange transition. Why did it work? That's the weird thing. Why did that work? But
The whole idea of that part is like contrast. So the end of Go Dig My Grave is so kind of hardcore, and it's supposed to be like a hardcore, really sonic
yeah.
depiction of grief, basically. So then the flip side of that is like this total dreamy kind of ethereal world of Clear Away. So you're totally flipping from one state to another.
It was really interesting because just learning about Go Dig My Grave, I listened to the version that you discovered, Radie, before sorry, after I listened to this, and was really just it was really cool to listen to. And then I actually read the original poem where that came from, The Butcher Boy, and I found it really cool, that transition. But even with saying about the soundtrack with that song, sorry, I forget the name. What's the name of that song again off the Live Long Day?
Katie Cruel was the one that was meant to be on a
Yeah.
soundtrack.
I read in an interview with you guys that you said you'd love to do a soundtrack, and honestly, I would love to see a Lankum soundtrack too. I think it would be
Would still love to do a
incredible.
soundtrack. You want a soundtrack horror film?
Yeah.
A horror film?
A horror film, yeah. We want to
Wow.
do a horror film.
I'm quietly confident that it's going to happen someday.
Yeah.
Honestly, knowing your musical talent, I have no doubt that there will be a Lankum soundtrack someday. And when it comes out, I will try and get it on vinyl. I will try
And
my best.
hopefully you'll be 18 and allowed to watch the film.
Yes, hopefully I will. Well, we're assuming it's going to be that scary.
Yeah,
But
probably take that long as well.
but False Lankum, though, I found it very interesting. Was I know most of that was written, what you guys wrote, most of what was written by you guys was wrote in a martello tower. And this was a new thing for me. I had no idea what it was, but it was on Dalkey Island and just by the sea, and it's a very interesting landscape. So even to be there writing the music, did it inspire or influence the writing in any way? Because it's a quite interesting landscape to write music in. And I can definitely picture, like, during Clear Away in the morning, just the sea coming in and out by Dalkey.
Yeah. I think it definitely did influence the music because we realized afterwards that there was a lot of sea imagery. It's because we were just seeing, like, that's what you saw every day was the ocean. Um, but also I don't know if you looked up what Martello Towers look like, because
Yeah,
they
I've
look
seen
like
them.
little round dungeons. So it's these really thick stone walls. So it's very kind of, you wouldn't know if it's day or night, and kind of, but also cozy. It was actually like a, beautifully converted one. And it was lent to us so we could write the album because it was actually level 5 lockdown. So we weren't allowed
Wow.
we were only allowed to go like to the local shop basically to buy stuff for dinner. That's, the way Ireland was at the time. So only that we got given this place to write and to live together, the album wouldn't exist. But I think as well that kind of, that even that contrast of, like, you know like a little dungeon, and then suddenly you're outside and you see the sea, and then just the total isolation of that we were all in, you know what I mean, at the time. I think that's in there as well. um it was just, it was a quite a strange, like pretty much a strange experience for absolutely everybody, I think.
And it's not a bad place though to be during lockdown, seeing that
not
lovely.
not too
But
bad now, and Doggy's pretty nice.
like I can honestly, to me, seeing, like, for different songs I can picture there just in different weather nearly, like for Go Dig My Grave, like hail, like a
Storm,
hailstorm,
yeah.
and then like Clear Away in the morning, like really sunny and just quiet, I can picture as well. So I'd say it would be a pretty nice place to write your music. And False Lankum, though, it was an album that did not go unnoticed by many, especially in Ireland. It was everywhere.
Yeah.
And I
Sorry.
know I don't think that was a bad thing though. See, I will see an album and I'll listen to it months after, and I'll miss the whole rush of the album, and then I'm going, God, I missed the rush, but and that happened for False Lankum that I actually heard it after it was really just it really blew up, which was really cool. And I know The Guardian had it their number one album of 2023, which it so totally deserved. It really, really did. But for you guys who just wanted to make a really nice piece of music, um, what was it like seeing people react to it so strongly and find it so interesting? And even people are like still really loving that album today.
I have to say it was particularly bizarre for me because when I was recording False Lankum, I was actually expecting a baby. So I was pregnant while I recorded it, and then when we were mixing it, I had the baby. So we mixed it through me. I was doing mixing sessions with the lads with like a newborn baby on my lap. And then the album came out and people were like, saying, "Oh, congrats on your album," whatever. I wasn't even on the internet. Like I was getting no sleep with like a newborn baby. So it was a really weird experience for me. But then I'd go down to the shop and someone would be like, "Oh, I seen this about the album, that's cool," or whatever. So it was really bizarre for me. And very like disjointed experience as well, because that felt a million miles away. But I also was so shocked that people really liked it because
Yeah.
I thought it was really extreme. I didn't know if people would be able to get on board with it, because some of it is so extreme, especially like I can't believe that Go Dig My Grave was so
The lead single.
successful and was like the single. Because I remember like the first time hearing the second half of that just being like, Jesus, that's really full on.
We put
Yeah.
together some of the outro on a day when Radie wasn't there, and then she came in the next day, and we showed her how that drop,
The sudden
just
drop,
where it's like
yeah. And I
Yeah.
just started roaring laughing.
she got such a fright that she just
Black.
started laughing.
Honestly, that's a better reaction that I would have had when if I was in a studio and you had full blast and then bang, like for me, I would
Yeah.
be not terrified in a bad way, but seriously shocked at that. And there are some very intense songs in that album, like The Turn, which is a great epic that instead of lasting 12 minutes for me lasted like 32 because I forgot
Three
to lift the
days. Yeah.
stylus. That is the only album that I have with that, and I am so happy. Well, now I have two with Live in Dublin, but that's just class. Love that. Um, but this album really did make a lasting impact on the community and really has brought trad back to not only trad but just folk music, drone music to different people. For example, I wouldn't have heard anything regarding traditional music or folk music growing up. Not much at all. Like I'd say I know a bit of the Pogues, but that's it. I am very much your stereotypical like regarding I would know some trad, like the Pogues and the Dubliners, but that's it. I am not experiencing the genre at all until I heard Lankum. So this really has brought music, especially traditional music and folk music, to the forefront of the community. And what proves this is you guys were nominated for the Mercury Prize for this album.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about this was, and I think it's a fact that many people will find interesting, is this was the first nomination for a folk album, I believe, in 11 years, which was
Yeah.
stunning. And to me, I thought was really cool because I know I didn't listen to much folk, but I knew that it was a pretty popular genre. So for you guys being nominated for the Mercury Prize, it really showed the importance of the album. How did you feel going for such a prestigious award?
Again, that was really surreal because, as you say, like folk albums don't usually get nominated. Um, and actually, the album that won was a jazz album, and a lot of the time, jazz
Yeah.
doesn't get nominated or win. So it was a really unusual year.
Ezra
So yeah,
Collective, I
I think we
believe.
were just really surprised. Even though like we don't see our music as being just strictly folk music, you know what I mean? But it did feel like we wouldn't be the type of album, maybe not to do with the genre, more to do with the extremeness, you know what I mean, and the kind of heaviness of some of it. Like I was surprised that something that heavy would get nominated for a Mercury. Um, so yeah, it was like a definite. It was a proud moment for us, when we went over for the awards and played at the awards, on the BBC. Yeah, so it was really astounding, and we got nominated for the Choice and
Yeah.
like a load of different awards that we would never have thought would be in the run for. Ivor Novello's,
Yeah.
just crazy stuff, you know. Yeah, just like, you know, if you wrote down your list of like, you know, music, career, dream, achievement, you probably wouldn't even dare write those things down. You know, you'd be like, well, that's never going to happen. So yeah, a crazy year for us, really. For 2 years, is it 2 years? 2 years.
Year and a half.
It was a really crazy year for Falls Lankum, and I think I was listening to the Folk Awards, and I heard you guys, and it was like and later in the night, and it was a school night for me, so I was just in bed, kind of listening to it, and I think you guys won one award, and I was like, yes, and then I think you were nominated for another award, and when you guys didn't get it, I went, how, listening to it, but really, you guys have been nominated for a lot of things, and you've won a lot of awards for False Lankum, but I do want to shift to your latest album, which is actually a live album called Live in Dublin. And if you guys haven't heard this, listen to it. Don't worry, links will all be down below in the description. Just make sure to listen to this album. And it's expanded digitally as well, which thanks so much for giving us that package. It's fantastic to be able to hear those songs, even about the panto joke in it. I found so funny. Like, actually brilliant. And if you have heard the album, you'll know what I'm talking about. It was just hilarious for me. So that album is just a bit of crack, but also a really interesting album. So I'd recommend having a listen to that. But to me, listening to Live in Dublin, it seems like the perfect idea. You guys are such good musicians. To hear you in the flesh would be incredible. So to release a live album would be the perfect idea. But I wanted to hear, what was your inspiration for releasing a live album?
Well, there's a couple of albums that I really love that are live albums. One of my first albums I really loved was one called The Missing Liberty Tapes. And it was a promo gig for the Paul Radie and Daragh album, which I can't remember what the album's called. It's purple. And
I think people just call it I think
and
it's just
purple.
called Andy Irvine and Paul Brady, isn't it?
And so I listened. That was one of my favorite albums when I was a teenager. I listened to it hundreds of times. And on that album, you can hear people laughing. You can hear them making a mistake on the mandolin. You can hear them laughing, making the mistake. There's people heckling from the crowd, all that kind of stuff. Or there's also like a Noel Hill and Tony Lennon album that has all these dancers. You can hear this kind of crazy party in the background. So all these people doing this amazing Shanos dancing and also just kind of roaring at each other. And it's just really exciting. You know what I mean? It's like this kind of proper charged atmosphere. So that would have been kind of some of the stuff that would have inspired me to want to do a live album. And also because we do different things for our gigs than we do in our albums. Like going to our gig is kind of a different thing. You know, we have songs we only play at gigs. For example, the Rocky Road to Dublin, we've never recorded that. You know, that was just a live performance. And we kind of take from all our different albums and we tend to do different things when we do it live as well. So it was also to try just give a little snapshot of like, you know, here's what we're doing right now in our favorite venue to play as well, Vicar Street. Love the PA in there and just love the venue, and you know, we feel really comfortable there. So
yeah.
And it was just kind of, you know, that's our hometown as well, playing our home, like all our families are in the audience, all our friends, you know, just a really nice experience for us as well. So
Wow. And honestly, for me, like I know it might be a couple of years before I ever see you guys in the flesh. Hopefully I do. But listening to this album, I felt pretty content. It was a lovely experience to be able to hear this because it's very hard to live up to the physical experience of a concert by recording it live. Because some of them can sound shallow or very much like a studio album when it's meant to just be a bit of a live concert. But for you guys, when you're playing up on stage and you know this is being recorded, and I know John was on sound as well, so it might have been a bit, it's gonna be a bit stressful for him as well. Did you guys feel extra anxiety or did you just play as normal, or did you try and change it up for the live album?
We just played as normal.
Yeah. I think it's best to try forget those things when you're playing. Same as like if somebody whose music I really admire is in the audience, I don't want to hear about it until I'm off the stage. Do you know what I mean? Like, because if I get told about it, I have to deliberately delete that information from my brain to do the gig properly. You know what I mean? So you have to just like, it's like suspension of disbelief, but you just have to not think about that. You have to force yourself to not think about the fact that it's being recorded and just try really get into what you're playing or singing, you know, and that's going to get the best results.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really, really cool. And especially with a lot of that music, like I believe it's 30 instruments you guys play all together. That
Probably more.
Stupid amount of instruments.
like
Takes us
that's
so long to say.
crazy.
It
That's
is.
actually insane to me. But
It's insane to us.
but it's really, really cool listening to you guys playing all these instruments live. And it's cool to see that you guys can kind of keep it cool and play all those different songs and really, really well. But I do want to ask about regarding classics like The Rocky Road to Dublin or On False Lankum, which is really cool, is that although only two of the album songs, sorry, I believe it's The Turn and Netta Perseus are the ones that you guys wrote. Although those are the only two that you guys wrote, you guys still made the other songs personal. Do you guys find approaching those classics quite difficult? Because a song like The Rocky Road to Dublin, a lot of people know. Do you find it difficult or do you actually find it quite easy to get in touch with those songs and nearly add those vocal harmonies like you hear in The Rocky Road to Dublin?
I think we find it easy to dismantle songs without. I think, you know, we would all be of the opinion like there's no point in doing a folk song, for example, exactly like somebody else has done it before, you know, somebody else has done it like that before. So it's more about like what do you hear when you hear the song? You know, what emotion do you feel when you hear it? What do you think it's about? What worlds do you think would suit it? And so then you dismantle it and then you put it back together. Um, basically trying to get across that you know, that world or that communication, that emotion that you're trying to communicate. We always talk about kind of being on it, like trying to do what you think the song wants or what like sounds truthful to the song. This is the folk songs now. You know, that the song kind of is telling its own story to you and you're just trying to like give it its setting the way you're hearing it. You know, does that make sense?
Oh no, totally. And especially with this track like The Rocky Road to Dublin, which is funny. Again, where I was saying earlier that I wasn't introduced to trad as a kid much, I would have known the Pogues. The first version of The Rocky Road to Dublin I heard was Dervish and Brendan Gleeson. So it was
Yeah.
a pretty weird version that I heard. So I
Yeah.
went from loving that to not hating that, obviously, when I heard yours, but I really love your version of it now. It's definitely my favorite because you change it up so much, and yet you keep that sound still there. And I found it very interesting actually on False Lankum. Underneath the turn on the liner notes, you have just make a sound, which I think applies to a lot of your songs, especially some of your covers. Just make a sound and it's perfect. And I read that going, wow, that is incredible. So I just thought that really applied to The Rocky Road to Dublin, especially. But I would like to talk to as my last two questions. First of all, I would love to ask, as musicians who have now released five albums, including your live album, and you've released the Lynch debut album as well with your brother, Ian Daragh. What tips would you give to younger musicians, whatever genre they're into, or whatever bands they want to play in, or whether they want to be their own solo artist? What tips would you give them?
I'd say just go for it, like, and never pay attention to what people might expect you to do, or never try and second guess what you think people want you to do. Like, actually just go for exactly what you want. And if you can't find somewhere to play a gig, put on a gig somewhere in a local hall, put on a gig in your friend's sitting room, like just go for it. Just keep doing it.
Wow, pretty good tip. That's a pretty good tip. Radie?
Yeah. Yeah, same exact, like that. I think, a kind of a DIY ethos is gonna not just benefit you and your music, but your friends, your community, everybody kind of start putting on music for yourselves and for your group of friends. I think that's a great thing to do. But in terms of actually like making the music and like what you're gonna do, yeah, I think just you need to try and not think about whether it's good or not. Like you never think about like what if what you're making is good or not. I think the way to go is, do you feel it's honest or not? So don't try to imitate other people. Don't try to sound like somebody else. You know what I mean? Like just try make it sound like you, and just try make it be an honest kind of communication from you to other humans, um via sound. And yeah, just make a sound. Just make any sound, because it's going to sound bad at the start, or you're not going to like it. It's like nobody sits down and like instantly like just like sounds brilliant or like comes up with like this amazing idea. That's the other thing, is that people I think sometimes think that like musicians that they admire, they think that they were born with some superhuman ability and like, you know, total just focus and whatever. And that's just not true. There's so much getting there that happens, and everybody starts at the start. And you have to put in so many hours of just like kind of chipping away, chipping away, chipping away until you've kind of, it's like doing a sculpture, you know what I mean? Like you just eventually it starts to take form and you're like, I know what I'm doing now. Actually, I know what it's going to be. I think I know where it's going to end up. But that everybody has to start at the start of that process. And everyone feels self-conscious when they start. And the only way to get over that is to just keep doing it.
Very good tip. And I think a lot of musicians will heed those words because they're
I
excellent.
hope they do.
But
I to hear
actually,
the music that
and do you know what I found very interesting? Where even you're saying that, it reminded me of something that I realized recently. Every musician or singer or band that I love do their own thing. They don't listen to anybody else. That they that they work for themselves to make music that they'd love to listen to. They make a sound. So I found
Yeah.
that really interesting to see for myself, that that's what's one of the greatest characteristics about musicians, and it's a great tip for future musicians to be like that now. And for my last question, I have a bit of a fun one. Uh I'd love to ask you guys, because there are some really weird stuff playing in your studio or you're listening to backstage. It's always really strange, especially your producer as well loves stuff like Sun and Swans, as I mentioned earlier. Just stuff that I find just interesting and really peculiar. So I want to know, what are your recommendations to the listener? What are you listening to currently that you think people would enjoy?
Beak.
Yes. Yeah.
Brilliant that they got a mention. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
They have a new
Love
album
Beat.
out.
They're so
I
good.
think it's their fourth album now.
Isn't it like
Yeah.
a like arrow, arrow, arrow,
Yeah,
arrow?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
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 I've
It's the
I've
one,
listened
the
to
new
one
one
of the
is
tracks of
got
it.
a dog with laser beam eyes, is the cover of it. But they're brilliant. Like I'd listen to all their albums. They're really good. And they're not that weird. I think Beak are kind
They're a
of
bit weird.
accessible.
They're a bit weird.
They're amazing live. Amazing.
Yeah,
I'll link their Bandcamp below for anybody who wants to listen to that for the latest album. It's pretty cool.
yeah.
Anybody else?
Anybody else? To look on my phone. Who am I listening to at the moment? I was listening to Sybil Bayer this morning.
Oh yeah,
I love her.
she's class.
German guitarist. I'm into a lot of like obscure, weren't meant to be publicly released album type things, like Jackson C. Frank or Sybil Bayer. It's kind of demo albums that somehow find the light of day, like Vashti Bunyan, Sybil Bayer, Jackson C. Frank, all people who didn't really intend to make albums, but kind of got success years later. But yeah, there's like a lovely kind of demo quality to all of them. That's not too weird though. They're actually very, very palatable places. All of those are very soft. They're soft music, all of them.
Oh,
I
okay.
need escapism at the moment. I need some soft, soothing, more Enya. I'll just listen to more Enya.
But those are some fantastic recommendations. And Beak, I saw them once because that album art, I just went, that came up like in my feed on Bandcamp, and I went, I've got to give that a listen. And I think I listened to Strawberry Line or something, and I went, that's
Oh
for
yeah.
another day. And I put the phone down. And then I came up on Spotify. We think you'll love Beak. And I went, these guys must be pretty good. So
Yeah.
I'll definitely have to listen to that full album because
Yeah.
it sounds pretty good. And I think
Can
it
I
could be very
recommend
interesting.
a gateway track to Beak, by the way? I
Oh,
think
of
if you're
course.
finding that, like, so if you're there going like for another day, right? There's one, I think it's on the album that is just the two chevrons. It's called When We Fall. And it's like them writing, it's like them being like, yeah, look, we know how to write, you know, those
Yeah.
kinds of songs, like, you know, catchy, beautiful, whatever. And it's kind of it's just a really that'll get you. I think that's a good gateway track. Listen to that. By the end, they've gone full Beak, and then you'll be into Beak. By the time you listen to that song, you'll be into
I will check that out because I've heard a lot about them, so I think it could be really interesting to hear. But no, those are great recommendations, guys. And unfortunately, that was my last question. And you answered all of them brilliantly. And
Thank you very much.
We did our best. We did our best.
you definitely did your best. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It was really
Thank
cool to
you.
speak to you, and have a listen to Live in Dublin. I know there's a limited number of gold vinyl that you can get.
We've got
And
the gold one.
We
yeah,
don't
I was able to get my hands on a gold one. So if you can get your hands on a gold one, listener, try your best to, because this is going off the shelves very quickly. And if Bear Creek is going on for 10 minutes longer than you thought it would, you should probably check your record player. But thanks so much, guys, for joining me
Thanks,
on the
Logan.
podcast.
Thanks so much.
I
Thanks
really
for
do
having us.
appreciate it.
And happy birthday.
Yeah, have a great day. Have a really
Thank you
good
so
day.
much, guys. I really do appreciate it. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. That was really, really cool. I can't wait to share that. I'll send it on to you.
Thanks for having us.
Just really, really cool. Again, I'm sorry for at the start. I didn't know if you guys thought we were
Oh, good.
That's
going to
okay.
be,
Don't worry about it. Don't
but
worry about it.
all of this is recorded anyways, and it will probably come out this Thursday, I think. But I'll let you
Yeah,
guys know once it comes out. And yeah, thanks so much. I will be reviewing this soon on my podcast. But as you know, I'm a fan. There won't be anything bad said about the album. And
We could do with a few insults anyway, couldn't we? We could say, yeah. We need
the
to
thing is,
keep the flag us off.
time for a backlash.
what I try and keep in mind is that, like, when I'm reviewing an album, and it always happens where after I interviewed Josh Homme, I reviewed one of his albums with Queen Stonehenge, and I was like, oh my God, I love this album. And I could picture somebody going, no, you interviewed Josh Homme. You don't love the album, you're just reviewing it. Whereas I always try and make it clear in my album reviews, I'm reviewing an album because I like it. Like, I'm not going to review an album that I don't like. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. There's no point in really doing that and saying
no,
why
not really. And I mean, the other factor is if somebody worked a year on an album and paid tons of people to make art, produce it, mix it, have it sent off on beautiful gold vinyl, let's say, and I say, yeah, 3 out of 10, awful, don't even try it. You can imagine their reaction.
That's very compassionate of you. That's very nice.
It's pretty hurtful. Whereas if I go, I love this album, I hope you do too, have a listen.
Yeah.
It's supporting an artist, and it's also not annoying the listener by constantly being annoyed at a musician. So I've also got that aspect. But I'll be reviewing it soon, and I can't wait to share my good thoughts on this album. I'm going to be listening to it a lot. Holds a very special place in my collection. So I was happy to get a copy. But thanks so much, guys, for joining me on my podcast.
Thanks, Logan.
I love your music. So I'll let you go now. Sorry for keeping you.
Great to talk.
Can't wait
go have
to
a
hear.
birthday cake, though. Go have your birthday cake.
I can't wait to hear what's next from Lankum. So thank you so much, guys.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.